body other than the face itself.
There are, in fact, 4 different types of, what we think of as Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
Very wide, pronounced nose. There was also a very ominous odor.
Phase 1 is to identify opportunities. I walked into a small clearing in less than 10-15 feet away from this enormous creature, and it scared the living hell out of me. Phase 2 is conducting investigations both of witnesses and locations. The size of the thing, it was 4 or 5 feet across the shoulders. Phase 3 is profiling research areas, what's there, how they move, feeding, things like that. About 8 feet tall, I guessed around 800 pounds. It was massive. I had no idea that anything like that existed. Phase 4 is create an intercept plan. I decided to shoot in the air to see if maybe it would scare it off. Phase 5 is the intercept and resolve the issue phase. It didn't do anything, didn't react, and then I heard a noise from my right rear, and from out behind some brush come another one and walked over by the first one. That's when I decided to do what the dog did. I took off running. Welcome to Witness of the Unknown. Hello everyone. I'm talking with my good friend Joe in Texas today. Joe, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, sir. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm just going to give you the microphone and tell me what's going on there.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I want to say thanks a lot for having me on your show. I know it's been a while since we talked, but I've been going through some personal issues, as you know.
No, but, I understand totally, and I certainly appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, no problem. So I was living in Houston for quite a while, for all my life, and we've gone out into the woods over there and San Luis Forest, and now recently I moved out to in the San Antonio area, and it took no time at all before I started telling people about what I do, and it was just like people started giving me their stories of whether they've had them or people that they know have had encounters, and it's something I tell people all the time too. People aren't just going to come up to you and talk and just say, "Hey, I had this happen to me." You got to kind of talk about it a little bit. And, so right. It's just kind of it's just kind of a funny way how it happened. I was at work one day and a young man was wearing a Bigfoot shirt, and I said, "Hey, so what's going on with your shirt there?" And he's like, "Oh man, he's like, oh man, because I believe in this stuff, man." He started telling me about how he's been involved in, well, not involved, but, always watched documentaries, and him and his father would watch them all the time. And so I just started kind of laughing at him, and not laughing at him, but laughing with him. And I told him what I did. And he was really surprised. And he went on to tell me about one of his former bosses who was, I think it was like in the 1970s. He was out fishing around the Canyon Lake area, which is about a 30-minute drive from where I'm at. Which is out here in what's considered the hill country of Texas. Mm-hmm. And he said the guy was out fishing one night, and he had like a little houseboat, I guess. And he said like at 2 o'clock in the morning, he just woke up for some strange reason and felt he had to go outside. Like he just had this strange feeling. And so he walks outside, and at the end of the pier, he sees this creature standing under the light, but it's still in the water, but it's standing in the light with they have a light on the pier. And he said this creature's just looking at him, just kind of swaying side to side. He actually goes back into the houseboat and gets his son. He says, "Hey, come here, there's something standing out here." And they get a spotlight and they shine it right on the creature. And when the spotlight hit it, he said it turned around and walked off into the water, into the deeper water.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just
That's
crazy,
pretty wild, huh?
Yeah. And he said that they got a good look at it. He told me how close it was, but I don't want to lie now because they were actually pretty close. It may have been 15 feet, may have been 30 feet.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that, but he said they got a good look at its face, the body. It was in black. The hair was long and black, and he described it as like part man, part gorilla is what he said. He said it wasn't very tall because we said where it was at, the water was like knee deep, and but he could see the knees on this animal. But he said it may have been like maybe 6 feet, 6.5 feet. It wasn't very tall.
Sure, probably a juvenile.
Yeah, I think so too. But it's the whole area where I'm at. Like I said, they've had a history also of tons of encounters, tons of sightings. There's a town out here called Converse, and they actually have their own animal called the Converse werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a story from the 1880s, I believe. There was a rancher. He had sent his son to go hunting for the first time by himself. And he said like 3 hours later, his son comes back and he's visibly shaken and scared. And he tells his father that he saw a monster. And the father, of course, is like, there's no such thing as a monster. You just got spooked. And he sends his son back out there, and his son never returned.
Oh, wow.
So he gets some of his friends, like 3 hours later, he gets some of his friends to go out there and look for his son. And they come up upon an animal eating at his son's body. And they all fired shots off at it, and they took off running at lightning speed, they said. And they described that as a werewolf.
Sure. What else would you compare or have an idea of back then?
Yeah, exactly. Then I have some friends of mine that have land up in what's considered the heart of the hill country. They came up to me about 2 years ago, and they asked me about the Bigfoot thing, and I told them, yeah, I said, that's what I do. I look into it. And they've had this land for like close to 30 years now in their family. And I guess since there's like 7 kids in that family, of course, with the mother and father, but the last 3, they're like, I'd say from 45 to maybe 50 years old. And Eddie said that when he was like 16 years old, they would go out there and they would hear, the wood knocking, which they didn't know what the heck it was. He said he thought someone was working out in the woods or something. And they seen he said they saw several sets of red eye shine.
Mm-hmm.
So he said not just like one set or 2 sets. He said they saw several sets at one time. And before they put their trailer home out there, they had they would just go out there and just camp out there, and they have a campfire sitting out there, which they still do. And he said there would be something circling just outside the firelight. And these are like 4 or 5 guys out there with rifles,
Sure.
and something circling. It couldn't be a person because you're on private property now. At this point, you got to know. But they've also seen what he described, someone in a hoodie walking out of the woods with a big backpack, and they crossed the road to the other property. It was at nighttime when they saw this person in air quotes.
Kind of improbable.
yeah. And at that, they were walking through the woods at night in the middle of nowhere. This place is in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
It's a very rocky, very hilly, very wooded area. I don't think I know that homeless people do build homes out in the woods, but walk away this far from civilization because it's like it's a good 12-mile point from the time you get to what you call civilization to where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And at that, it's like I said, it's rocky and it's hilly and it's wooded. So someone to do that would just be crazy.
Yeah, not a great location.
Yeah, they've had rocks thrown at them, and like I said, for years they just never knew what was going on. They would be walking through the woods, checking their deer feeders, and rocks would come through, whizzing right by their head. My cousin actually said at one time a rock came through right across the top of his head.
Good Lord.
When the father built the main deer feeder, they used these posts from the stop signs.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew somebody who worked for the city of Houston, and they gave them these stop sign posts. And he said he put it up when they came the next weekend. I think it was 3 legs that he used to use this deer feeder. He said all the legs were bent like in a U shape. a car is not going to come to this area. You can't drive a car, not even a truck hardly.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
They ever notice any of the feed missing from the deer feeders?
Yeah. They said sometimes the feed would be just about gone, and all the feed, a lot of feed would be left on the ground, but most of the feed would be gone. Like something came through and just got all the feed out and ate it right there. One of the sisters, her and her husband were asleep there because they would go up there on the weekends, spend time out in the middle of nowhere. And this is when they got the trailer. It was like 11 years ago, and when they first got the trailer put in there. She said she heard like this, oh, or some kind of like a cough the way she did it, and it woke her up, and the window's right there by her head. So she looked up and she said she saw this man standing in the window. She says she could see his eyes, kind of like shimmering from the ambient light. And so she turned and she woke her husband up and was like, hey, there's a man outside. And when he turned around, the man was gone, but he went out there with a rifle and he didn't see anything. So I asked her, I said, how tall would this individual have to be? How tall, where was his head at? She said it was at the top of the window. Mm-hmm. And she's 5'1". So I said, if you were standing out there, where would you come to? She said, my head would just come to the bottom of the window because I wouldn't be able to look in. And she said, so whoever was standing out there had to be 7 feet tall. And I said, well, how wide were they? And she goes, whoever it was took up the whole window because that window's about 4 feet wide.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not likely a man.
Yeah. And again, well, this is a time where they didn't even know anything about Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Mm-hmm. They weren't even thinking this until a couple of years ago. What was the other? Oh, yeah. That same sister, she has twin girls, and they were, at the time they were little. They were like 11 or 12 years old. They're like 23, 24 now. And they were asleep outside in the tent, and her and her husband were inside the trailer. They were asleep. And the girls come in like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning screaming bloody murder. I mean, they're terrified. And, of course, the parents wake up, and the girls are telling them there was a monster outside, walking around outside their tent. They could hear it breathing, and that it pushed the tent from the top all the way down on top of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty scary situation.
Yeah, especially for a couple of girls.
Oh, yeah.
And the mother and the father, the original owners of the property, her and her husband were there one night. That was just them by themselves. No, he had a friend that was there with him. And she was watching TV, and she had the door open with, had a screen door. And she said she could hear something breathing really hard, and it came all the way up to the door. So she got her husband up and said, "Hey, there's a bear outside." And so he woke his buddy up, and they ran out there with rifles. They chased it back to the wood line. And when he came back, he told her, "I don't think that was a bear." And that's all he told her. "I don't think that was a bear." And one of the other sisters, they were like the whole family had spent the night over there one night. So they had run out of room for everyone to sleep. So the sister, her husband, slept in the van, and he came inside at like 2 o'clock in the morning, just terrified because something pushed the van. It didn't rock the van; it pushed the van. He said it pushed it several feet.
Wow, yeah, that'd be a little unnerving, to wake up to something out there rocking your vehicle or moving it. Yeah,
and one of the younger sisters that I had talked to her recently, and she told me that she had a friend, and I've been trying to get a hold of this girl because they still kind of keep in touch through Facebook. And but they were out there. She used to go spend a night. As a matter of fact, my sister would go spend a night with them too. And she goes, "Hey, come here, I want to show you something." The girl who owned whose parents owned that property, they had a chicken coop, and there was a big footprint by the chicken coop. And she says, "Look, Bigfoot did that." And at the time, the girl was young. She had never heard anything about a Bigfoot. She said. And she goes, "What do you mean the Bigfoot?" She goes, "Yeah, Bigfoot comes out here and he messes with our chickens." And she said she put her foot in it. She goes, "Joe, it was so huge. The foot was so huge, even though she was a small child at the time, maybe 13, 14 years old." She goes, "No, that's your dad's foot. That's your dad's foot." She goes, "But she goes, it was like twice the size of a man's foot, easily."
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So I've been trying to get a hold of these people too, but she hasn't been able to get a hold of them for me. So I'd love to hear what they've encountered.
I'm sure there's a lot more going on around there, especially if something's coming around the chickens and their the farm or whatever they have there.
And still to this day they have activity because last November I was told that they were out there hunting and something was throwing rocks at them still. or like they'll get paced back in the woods. Something will pace, something will pace them in the woods, and they would always find these broken branches and big broken sticks. And I showed them some pictures of some tree structures, and they were like, "Yeah, we see that all the time, you know." And their dad used to get mad. He used to get mad. He's thinking that when the neighbors down the road was coming, stealing their firewood.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. He would say, "I think that's Pete coming over trying to take my wood," you know. And they were like, "Well, why is he making it into a teepee?" You know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they would always find those structures. It was fun.
It's amazing the amount of activity going on everywhere, especially right now.
Oh yeah, I think right now is the time that they start moving, and I wanted to go out to the state park near here because I think like 2 years ago, maybe 3, there was a sighting out there of a couple, and I'm only like 30 minutes away from that park also, and there was a couple walking down a path, and they had a big rock come thrown at them, and they actually spotted the creature standing in the middle of the path. So I want to go check out that park also.
Apparently, didn't want them around there.
No, I was saying that. They said it was a pretty good sized rock, like, I don't know, maybe like the size of like a melon or something like that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to get hit with something like that.
Yeah, and apparently these things can really fling those rocks.
Good thing you're not too good at aim.
That's it. I think they actually do try to misuse that sometimes, because my cousin was telling me that those rocks will come right above their heads every time. And the name of that park is Palmetto State Park. That's the name of it.
It's interesting, you know. Even gorillas and chimps will throw things like that. At other animals and people, and you know, so it's kind of a common primate behavior.
Yeah, and those you see them on YouTube, and they've got some power behind it.
Oh yeah, right.
I lost my train of thought. I had another good story to tell you.
I do that all the time. I'll be going down one direction and my mind will pick up on some piece of whatever I'm talking about and it'll shoot off another way, and then I forget where I'm going with the original line of thought.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Yeah, but out here in this area, like, it's very hilly, very wooded area, and I love it out here. Honestly, I see deer all the doggone time. You pass up a lot of deer on the highway out here every day.
Oh yeah,
got hit, you know. I don't know where I'm going with this. So, as you're coming from Houston to San Antonio, you get about, I'd say maybe 40, 50 miles out, you start passing up all these creeks, right? I mean, there's a tons of creeks out here, and ravines and rivers. And you're passing up all these creeks, and there's like Allen Creek, Mill Creek, Walnut Creek, Long Branch Creek, you know, all these typical kind of names, you know. And then you come across one creek, and it's called Hollering Woman's Creek.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty strange. You know, like I said, you have all these common type creek names, and then you have Hollering Woman Creek.
Any idea where the origin of that name come from, or what the story behind it is?
You know, I've looked it up, and people always say that it's either maybe mountain lions that were on this creek, but why that one creek? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then also, you know, like the Spanish people, the Mexican people, they have this myth about it's called La Llorona, which is the crying woman that where she drowned her kids in the water, so she's always out by the water screaming, looking for her kids.
Oh, that's interesting.
But I don't think that's what it is. I just think it's probably, you know, someone's hearing these things out there screaming, and it sounds like a woman is screaming.
Yeah, it's interesting, some of the names, you know, that come. I know that made me think of one from the Yakima Indian Reservation in Washington State. One of the names is Owl Woman Monster.
Oh wow!
So there's some, you know, some interesting connections. Sometimes you'll pick up on when you hear something. Yeah.
And I think further south of here, almost I don't want to say all the way to the border, but kind of in that area, I think there's a creek called Monkey Run Creek or something like that.
Now that's interesting too, isn't it? It makes you wonder where they come up with that name.
Yeah. It's called Monkey Run Creek. So, you know, how did they come up with that name?
Kind of makes you wonder if it's a direct observation of something, and that's what they, you know, just kind of, that's what we saw. Let's name the creek that.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of, I don't want to say a bunch, but when you see like a bunch of common type names, and then all of a sudden you see something, an oddball name like that, you know, you kind of wonder how they got that name.
It's interesting sometimes just to go and if you can dig up the history of something. I was told one time to keep looking at older maps and older maps, the farther back you go, because they change names periodically.
Mm-hmm.
And when you find some of those old original names, they're very interesting, some of the history on that.
Yeah, yeah. And as a matter of fact, my friend with the Bigfoot shirt that I was telling you about, he told me that the story I told you about the Converse werewolf, that they actually told him that story when he was in elementary. You remember the teacher telling him that story?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So I of course I Googled it and looked it up and found it. And like I said, I'm not even a mile from that area.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so like where I live at is like out in the middle of nowhere. Well, I don't want to say it's out in the middle of nowhere, but the city itself, it's like a little city, and all of a sudden you drive outside and you're like in the hill country.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time we drive in and we're going down, we pass a creek or even like a railroad crossing, and I always look down those railroad crossings, and I always look down the creeks. And
yeah, you got to watch those areas.
Yeah, yeah. And I had another interesting story. I had a Bigfoot decal made for my truck,
mm-hmm.
and so I actually called the guy on the phone. I sent him the artwork that I wanted him to add it on there. And so when I went to go pick it up, and this was in Houston, and when I went to go pick it up, he's like, hey, what's the deal with this, But he wasn't like, making fun of me. He was kind of, he was serious. And so I told him about what I did. And he's like, my family's up from Nacogdoches. It was like a 2-hour drive north of Houston. And he said that, and he was a little bit older than me. He was like maybe 55 years old, right in that area. And he said that his uncles would tell him when he was little that that these Bigfoot would come up to their property in Nacogdoches and come in the window when their mom, which was the guy's grandmother, when she would bathe the kids, that it would come up to the restroom window, look in, and watch her bathe the kids.
Wow.
And then
that's kind of creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And so he was telling me that his uncles, when they were younger too, when they were walking down the railroad tracks, they had that white rock at that time.
Yeah.
And then he said they were walking and they weren't even really looking. All of a sudden, this animal stood up, and it was solid white too, and it stood up and it just walked into the woods. And he says his uncle's phone was like 30, 40 feet from him, and it stood up. They didn't even realize it was there. It was so white.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and they were little kids. It's like I said, I know sometimes it's kind of a weird subject to approach, but if you talk about it enough, people will tell you stuff.
Oh yeah, sometimes you just kind of have to step out there into the unknown and ask.
Yeah, yeah. I know I've told you the story about my police officer friend, who's actually a canine officer. His dog is a drug dog in particular. He was telling me that he would go out to by the San Jacinto River, and he would let his daughter run out there, and she was like 10, 11 years old, and he would let his dog go find her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him, I said, hey, look, man, I know you're a good guy and you're a good family guy, and I said, you're probably gonna laugh at me and make fun of me. I said, but there are stories out there of Bigfoot, and so I'd be careful if I were you.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, he's a big time joker. I mean, he's one of the funniest people I've ever met, and he got so serious, and he actually turned away from me. He walked like 3 or 4 steps away, and I was like, man, what did I say? Is he thinking, and I thought maybe I went too far, and
maybe you thought you were crazy or something,
Yeah, let me remove myself from this conversation. So he turns back around because he goes, I'm gonna tell you a story, and I said, okay. And he said he has another dog, which is a pit bull, and he said this dog is mean. He said this dog will chase rabbits, hogs, deer, even people, other dogs.
Mm-hmm.
He said one day he was back there walking through the woods, and he actually had like this little, what do you call this little thing that shoot the clay targets, the skeet pool thing?
Oh, right.
Yeah, he had set one back up there in the woods in his little clearing. He would go back there and shoot. He would ride his 4-wheeler through there. Well, he was walking back there, and he said all of a sudden, his dog started like getting real close to him, like she was scared. And he said even he started getting this scary feeling,
mm-hmm.
and he could hear something walking, and he said whatever it was on 2 feet. He thought it was a person, and he said he would stop, and it would stop, and he told me, he said, Joe, I would take 1 step, and it would take 1 step, and he said he actually picked up a rock and threw it in that direction of the sound he was hearing. And his dog by this time was between his legs, curled down in the ball. Didn't want to move.
Boy.
And this is a 65-pound dog. You know,
Yeah.
at the time, it may be big. It might be bigger now, but it was kind of a young pit bull. But like I said, she was mean. She didn't back down from anything. And he said, Joe, he goes, I got so scared. He goes, I took out my pistol and I pointed it in that direction. And he said that he had to pick his dog up and walk out of the woods with her. But just that scared him so bad, Will, he never went back to the woods, right?
That's a pretty good indicator with the dog's behavior. That kind of a dog, you know, with that disposition and all.
Yes. As a matter of fact, he said when he walked it, he always kept it on the leash, you know, even in the woods. He said I couldn't, you know, let her run around like he could his dog. And so, you know, so we're talking a little bit more, and he says, Joey, because he says, I got to tell you something. I got to be honest with you. He goes, you know what? You were honest with me, and I took a lot of guts for you to tell me, you know what you do. He said, I ran out of there. He said, I ran out of there like a little bitch. And I'm sorry to use that word, but that's what he told me.
I don't blame him.
And
sometimes you got to go with your gut, you know.
You know, and this guy himself, you know, he's not afraid of anything. He's been a cop, I don't know, at least 16, 17 years, and maybe longer than that. And I've seen this guy get into fights with other shoplifters. I wasn't there when this particular fight happened. I was in the warehouse, because if I would have been up front with him, it wouldn't have gotten that far. But he actually got the handcuffs on this guy on one of his wrists. But the guy was fighting him, and that guy used that as a weapon. And he actually fractured my buddy's orbital bone with that handcuff.
Oh, no.
And my buddy was still fighting him, and he still managed to arrest the guy. You know, so you know he's not a
tough dude.
yeah. He's a tough guy. He's a tough guy. And he told me himself that he was scared. As a matter of fact, he never went back into those woods. He left his skeet pull back there, and he sold his four-wheeler.
Wow.
He said he wasn't going back to those woods. So we went to go check it out, and we went to the area where this happened. And as we're getting close to the wood lines, he stops and he says, "Hey, Joe, I'm not going in there." I said, "Okay, that's fine." And I kept walking, and he's still behind me. He stopped where he was at, and he says, "Joe," and I turned around and go, "Yeah." He says, "I'm not going in there." I said, "Okay, that's fine." I said, I'll be right back. I'm just gonna look around a little bit."
Yeah.
And he had his machete with him. He gave me the machete. He goes, "Here, man, take this." And then so when I came back, we're walking along the wood line, and he says, "Man," he goes, "I even brought some special bullets for this." he had a 45. He said he bought some expensive bullets, you know, for going out there.
You know, it's interesting. Sometimes you be with somebody like that. I've experienced that myself. I have a friend up north here who's not a cop, but he's, you know, ex-Navy, tough dude. And I went to look in an area where he lived, and a number of years ago is when he had his encounter, and he was still so shaken up that he wouldn't let either one of us go in there unarmed. And he was just visibly shaken the whole time we were in there.
Yeah. So my buddy, he was. I saw him like a year later, and man, when he saw me, he came up to me so fast. He's like, "Come here, I gotta tell you something." I said, "Yeah." He said he took his dog up there, which is the canine. Mm-hmm. And when he took him up there, they didn't go in the woods, but he said, "We're playing along the wood line. We're playing fetch." He says, "Joe, I started hearing those same footsteps." He says, and I threw the ball because my dog went and got it, and his dog stopped, turned towards the wood line, and just started barking like crazy, just barking, which his dog doesn't do. And you know, like and those drug dogs, they're actually trained not to bark like that because you know, when you go do raids and things like that, they got to be quiet.
You can't have them alerting the presence.
Yeah. So he said his dog started barking like crazy. He was calling him to come back. He said his dog walked all the way back to him backwards. He wouldn't turn his back on the wood line. Yeah, wow. He said his dog wouldn't turn around, wouldn't turn his back to the wood line.
That's not something you see very often.
And as his dog got closer, he said he could hear the footsteps coming closer too. And he said, "Man, because I got my dog, we got out of there." He goes, "I'll never go back to that area again."
That's wild. Yeah.
But yeah, I think people need to talk about it more, and you'll be surprised who has encounters, who hasn't had encounters.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did you want to, before we go any further, give out your contact information if people want to get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, of course. My email is jrg.hillcountry@gmail.com. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Yeah. Especially out in this area, you want to go out. Unfortunately, since moving out here, I don't have any of what I would call my team members to go out with me. And I definitely would love to go out in the Hill Country area some more and go check out those areas.
Yeah, you always do a really good job. So, I very much recommend anybody in your region to get in touch with you. And, if you've seen anything or heard anything or experienced anything, or you just want to get in touch with Joe, by all means, get in touch with him and
Yeah.
he'll help you out.
Yeah. And I am trying to get that guy to come out on your show, Will, the one I was telling you about. He's kind of
right.
Yeah. He's just kind of weird. He has a crazy story. Will, I'd love for you to hear it, and I'd love for him to tell it to you.
Well, of course, we keep them anonymous and locations and everything. I mean, I don't believe that anybody needs to know people's names and locations. I think it's more important that they hear what's happening, what people are experiencing, because I talked to a guy in Nebraska just last weekend, and you would never think, somebody'd see a Sasquatch in Nebraska, but sure enough, and he was, you could hear how shaken he was in his voice recounting this experience. It only happened recently, but it helps other people to hear that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they experience these things and they kind of get stuck, and they don't know what to do with it, and it kind of affects their lives. It can, very much, in fact. So, some people come forward like that, they talk, and like I say, they don't have to use names at all, personally, locations, anything, but just to talk about it is helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Well, do you have anything more you wanted to talk about, or?
I should have wrote all this stuff down.
I know there's always so many, instances.
I can't think of any more interesting stories that have happened around here. Oh, I know one. On my last outing in Houston, one of the last outings I went to in Houston, well, actually in the Savings Forest, I went with my buddy Ernie and with Shane.
Mm-hmm.
We went out there. We went down this back road out in the middle of nowhere. This is like 15 miles out in the middle of nowhere. Also, it's on the east side of Savings Forest, and so we're standing out there, and I'll say what I was doing. I had a dog whistle. Someone told me to use a dog whistle, so I said, okay, I'm gonna try it. So I had this dog whistle, and I'm blowing on it, and I only blew it like maybe 4 or 5 times,
Mm-hmm.
and we heard this growl come back at us, Will.
Oops.
and this growl, I mean, I don't know, maybe 150 yards away, but it was a growl. It didn't like what you would say would like fill up the forest. It felt like it went from point A to point B to us.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense?
Sure. Like it was directed.
Oh yeah, like it was direct. It was like someone throwing a ball from point A to point B. It was the same kind of feeling, and you could hear where the growl started, and you could feel it when it ended at us. And we've got that recording, and no one knows how to download it onto a computer.
Wow.
But it was the weirdest growl I ever heard. I've never heard a growl that was like so directed at us. It was definitely directed. Like I said, it did fill up the forest,
Mm-hmm.
but it came towards us. Almost like it was its own physical,
Sure.
entity.
That'd be interesting to hear.
And also like in I want to say it was in late March, early February. Me and my daughter, she came to live with me, and so I took her camping because she's like, my oldest lives in Florida, my son is in California, so she's here with me.
Mm-hmm.
So we went camping, and of course she loves going out and investigating with me also. She's always looking for stuff, and we were going down one of the hiking trails, and she says, "Hey, Dad," she goes, "I think something's following us, So we're walking, and sure enough, you can hear those just footsteps, just ever so quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And we were maybe like a quarter mile into the woods at this point, and all I had on me was a 9mm, and I told her, "No, let's go back. I don't know.
Not
I don't
quite
want
big
to
enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, not just that, but I didn't want to get in a fight with anything, whether it's a bobcat or a hog.
Very true. Yeah.
With her being right there. But one of the interesting things that happened is I don't know if people do it or the forest rangers do it, but a lot of these trail markers, they're like these big 4x4 posts,
Mm-hmm.
and people will leave like a case of water or even like a gallon jug, just sitting on top of it. I guess for anyone who's thirsty.
Sure. Yeah.
And I guess sometimes people pack that stuff in there. They don't want to pack it out, so they just leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
And So on our way in, we saw this gallon of water sitting on top of the post, and we didn't pay any attention to it. And as we were walking in, we heard this loud thud, and we both kind of turned around and said, well, what the heck is that, And we didn't pay attention to it. So on our way out, when we passed up that marker, that water jug was sitting on the ground, like it had been knocked off that post. And it wasn't a windy day, and I don't know how strong the wind would have to be to knock over a full gallon of water. And when we thought about it, said, you know what, that's what that sound was. That sound was that water jug.
The water hitting the ground, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. That was certainly weird.
Yeah, there's definitely weird things that happen occasionally. I mean, whether they're Bigfoot related or not, but it makes you wonder.
Yeah. One day out there at the location that me and Shane had went to, that same location, I took my son out there, another buddy of mine named Jacob, and a buddy of mine named Armando. He also went out there on that first expedition with me and Shane. We were out there. We were recording stuff and trying to find stuff. And it was late at night. It was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. It was during the week at that. And we had made a special trip to go out there on the middle of the week. So we get out there and we're poking around, and we actually recorded a couple of whoops, and I heard it sounded like a rock clack. I got that on recording also.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it was during the week, so it was like 10 to 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, well, I got to go back home. So hour drive for me to get back to the house, and I had to go to work the next morning. So we're putting all our stuff back into the truck, and I hear something hit the ground, and right away I thought maybe one of the guys dropped a flashlight or something. And they were like, hey, Joe. And I was like, what is it? Look at this. And they shot in a flashlight, and there was a rock, maybe about the size of like a lemon or a lime.
Mm-hmm.
This rock just came flying out of nowhere and landed right there by us. And we were like in the middle of a small clearing. So we stayed out there a little bit longer. We were like, okay, we'll just sit here and see what happens, if anything happens. And my friend Jacob says, hey, look, there's eye shine. And we turned around, and we didn't see anything wrong because there was eye shine right there, and it turned around and walked off. It looked like it turned around and walked off. So I said, okay. So I turned around to face the woods, and they had their back towards me. And about 5 minutes later, I see some eye shine, but this time it's down at the ground level.
Mm-hmm.
And it was these two red eyes. I mean, it looked like LED lights. It was crazy. I'm not saying that they were illuminated out there like some people say, but
right.
It was definitely,
Mm-hmm.
man, it was some bright eye shine. It was right at ground level. And I'm like, oh shit, Say, look. Of course, when I told them to look, and they turned around, and the eye shine disappeared.
Right.
But that was crazy that night.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we'll wrap up here. You definitely have to come back periodically because it's, everybody likes to hear what's going on in your area.
Yeah.
And from you. So appreciate you coming on, and let's do this again real soon.
Yeah. And hopefully, anyone, like I said, wants to get in contact with me, get in contact with me. I need somebody to go out here with me.
Absolutely. And give out your email again so folks can, to contact you.
Okay. It's jrg.hillcountry@gmail.com.
All right, Joe. Well, listen, I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay. You too, sir.
All righty. Thanks, everyone, for joining me this week. Be sure to tune in again next week as we explore another account from a witness of the unknown.